Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Film Fellas. Joined again by Nick. Say hello, Nick.
Hello.
And as last time we discussed Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior, and during our conversations on various other movies, we both discovered that we're massive fans of The Thing. So, Nick, talk to me about The Thing. Why do you love it?
Well, I realised after our last conversation, I kind of misspoke a bit. I said it was one of the ones that I watched really late at night when I was younger, and that's not actually what happened. What happened was when I was studying film at sixth form, it transpired. I was talking to one of my tutors, and they worked out I hadn't seen it yet, and they lent me the DVD. But they probably should have done. I was still probably too young to watch it. But yeah, and I just fell in love with it. And yeah, just all of it. The sort of I've got one of my favorite sort of subgenres of like horror and sort of sci-fi thrillers, anything like that, is like a small group of people
Yeah.
picked off one by one, normally in one location, getting picked off one by one. And this is probably like the best film version of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar, isn't it, to Alien?
Yeah.
Which it probably very much a lot of people would have a heated debate about which is the better sci-fi horror, because they are intrinsically both the same sort of movie. It's interesting. Usually, what you find in film is that a lot of kind of film directors, their first movies are usually a people in an enclosed space trying to kind of, Alien is famously Ridley Scott's first movie. This obviously isn't Carpenter's first movie, but interestingly, Ridley Scott's son, his first movie was a very kind of similar sort of film where it's people in an environment, and it's I can't remember what it's called, but it's some sci-fi movie that I remember seeing, and it is you're right, it's like a little subgenre, and there's people who don't do it well. You can get some horrible ones. I mean, I guess you could say things like Hollow Man is a kind of,
I mean,
is
what are we talking? Like sci-fi horror, just in general, or
well, that kind of like people in an enclosed space
yeah, maybe
sort of
maybe.
thing.
I mean, I think it doesn't have. I think it doesn't not necessarily restricted to like horror, because like I think like Reservoir Dogs is a good example.
True. Yeah.
It's like they were in a confined space and they can't get out, and it's just them sort of turning on each other, just sort of that
Mm.
paranoia aspect to it. I, yeah, I don't. Did you say that Alien was Ridley Scott's first film? Because I think that was
Oh, was it? Oh,
first.
or was it the Duelist? Have I got
Yeah,
it wrong?
that's
Right.
just that one. I just but John Carpenter like did the thing, and that I did sorry Dark Star, and that's obviously like a sort of setup like
Yeah, I mean, he'd done a few things before that, but that was his first kind of major release, wasn't it? I've got to be honest, I really love Dark Star. I've got a real soft
oh no,
spot for it.
I love that one as well. But it's
Yeah.
interesting because that's obviously the launch point for like you could see it in The Thing, but also because it was written by Dan Bannon, who
Yeah. Yeah.
wrote the screenplay for Alien. So that's sort of the launch point for both Alien and The Thing.
Mm.
Quite interesting.
And I always remember Dark Star because it had that weird robot in it. It's like a beach ball, basically.
Yeah, the Alien. Yeah, it's basically Alien,
Yeah.
but just without.
It's basically a blow up ball, and
Yeah.
that always made me laugh. Did that one? So, and obviously The Thing came out in the summer of '82, which a lot of film people kind of like say is still the best summer for movie releases. So in that summer, you had E.T. was obviously the big
Yeah.
release. You had Wrath of Khan, you had Rocky 3, you had The Road Warrior as well. You also had Blade Runner. I mean, essentially, you probably have three of the greatest sci-fi movies, three or four of the greatest sci-fi movies: E.T., Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, Blade Runner, and The Thing as well. It was a great summer for movie releases.
Yeah, and there's the sort of the idea that ET sort of completely tanked the thing chances at the box office just because it was like people didn't want to see.
Mm. Well, it very much, wasn't it? Is that you had the start of the Reagan era. There was like a newfound optimism in America, driven by Reaganomics, and it was all about shopping malls and movies and feel good. And I think even in '82, you had like some movies re-released. So I think Raiders was re-released. I think Star Wars was re-released. So it was very much like it was all about the blockbusters and things like that. And you're right. I think E.T. came out July 82, and then The Thing came out in August.
Right.
And essentially, I mean, it was critically mauled as well. Was The Thing at the time? It wasn't a very well loved movie.
I know it's really strange. It's like, because I remember when I was at school, I was well into like films even then, and I got this book that was not an old book. It had just been out, and it was sort of talking about monsters and stuff. And like there's an article about The Thing, and even in that, it's a sort of sniffy attitude to the John Carpenter one. It says, "Oh, best you're better off to stick with the original," and it's like. I don't get it, because the original is fine. I don't mind it, but like,
you mean the original is in The Thing from Another World?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The one that is and isn't a Howard Hawks film.
Yeah. And it also essentially, when I remember you messaged me about this, was if you take the original source material, which is Who Goes There, which is the book version, The Thing is far truer to the book than The Thing from Another World. I mean, literally, The Thing from Another World basically takes the simple premise of it. That's it, and it's a completely and utterly different movie.
Well, it basically turns out like it's a Frankenstein type monster, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas what I like about the John Carpenter thing, and I mean, kind of Who Goes There. I like that. Who Goes There? Obviously, it has got a shape. It has got it. Whereas in the John Carpenter version, you even at the end of the film, you're like, what? You don't actually know what the thing looks like.
Yes,
it's sort of taking all the appearances of everything that it sort of assimilates or absorbs. And I think that was one of the sort of mission statements of the film at the start. If that's not too like arsey, I think they said that because the Alien had been so successful, and with that design, I think they were like trying to go completely the opposite direction and find something that didn't really wasn't a man in a suit for a start. Sort of distinguish itself from Alien with this sort of this alien that doesn't have a form, which I think, and it's really well done.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if I remember, I mean, it's a while. I went pre-COVID. I had a bit of a thing where I kind of like went through and read loads of classic sci-fi books, and I wanted to kind of understand like why they were so revered. So I read Who Goes There, I read I Am Legend, and it's amazing because we still haven't got a proper true version of the I Am Legend book with the proper ending from the book. The book's ending is amazing, and books like Forever War I read as well, which still hasn't been filmed, but I know Ridley Scott has it kind of optioned. But Who Goes There, I mean, is essentially, if I remember rightly, the first half of the book, or first third of it at least, is basically set in the autopsy room. It's basically them all around it with the thing on the slab, and it has a brief kind of flashback early to like that where they found it and where they've got it. But ultimately, then the first third of the book is just in that room where it's on and Blair's chipping away at the ice on it and things like that. And then obviously it then takes other elements which are in the film. So the film is actually quite true to the book. It basically just adds more at the beginning and in the middle and at the end. I mean, it changes the ending a little bit and I actually think it makes a better ending. I actually think it's a rare occurrence probably where the film is actually probably better than the book.
Yeah, and it's also a remake that's better than the original.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's funny. I remember seeing The Thing from Another World, and it's very clearly obvious where James Cameron got the idea for the motion trackers from Aliens for, because there is literally a scene where they're all walking around corridors and they've got these Geiger counters, which basically, because the thing is radioactive, and they're all basically walking around with guys with guns and this guy, and it's like, that is literally Aliens.
What you were saying about Who Goes There, I think is completely right. Because they it's because I read it the other day, and it's because only like I think it's only like 70 something pages. It's
Oh
really
yeah, I mean it's a small,
but
but I mean it's a
yeah,
short story, really, isn't it?
yeah, but like all the stuff that all the most memorable bits of the John Carpenter film, it's they're taken from the book and just sort of
Mm,
elaborated on and given more like attention to it. Like yeah, the blood testing scene, which is my favorite in the John
mm.
Carpenter film, is sort of is there it's there. There's a sentence that basically sums up the scene in the film, which is just brilliant. But yeah,
And I think because I think that scene with blood testing scene is probably one of the reasons why I think the movie edges Alien as a better sci-fi horror.
oh, okay, cool.
I just think it has better set pieces. I just think like the whole thing about the dogs, because the dogs, like the dog scene is heartbreaking with the huskies, and they're all you've got that character is clearly
Uh,
emotionally vulnerable and
yeah,
and attaches to the
uh,
dogs.
yeah, it's Clark.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and his like his face, you can see like these dogs are in distress, but when McCready starts shooting them, and he's like horrified. This I feel there's more emotion. There's more, even though the characters aren't well defined, they are better defined.
um, yes and no. I don't know. I
Go on.
for me, I don't. It's for me. It's like I don't, if Alien didn't exist, I'd probably say the Thing was the best horror sci-fi.
Mm,
Oh, although the Fly also exists, and I love the Fly. So I mean, there's
yeah.
a few contenders, but I don't know. I think the atmosphere in Alien just edges it for me. Just the scale of it, the
Mm.
sort of I think they are comparable. I think it's interesting. I like both of them a lot, and I'm happy.
I actually think in a true sci-fi horror, if you're going to go pure sci-fi horror, I also think the Thing's got a better ending. I think Alien panders to, oh, you can go to sleep now, it's all right, everything's going to be all right. Where the Thing is proper true sci-fi horror, where it's like, no, everything's not going to be all right.
That's I'll give you that, but at the same time, I think Alien edges out the Thing in terms of the final sort of confrontation with the alien. I think Sigourney Weaver in the shuttle and when the reveal that the alien's in there,
Mm.
that is absolutely terrifying. Because
Yeah, it is very, very tense.
and,
And I guess you could
and I think
argue that the Thing doesn't have a moment like that.
it's a bit anticlimactic. The final showdown, I think it was budgetary. That obviously you don't really see the Thing properly because there was stop motion. I think John Carpenter wasn't happy with how it looked, so you only get a briefest glimpse of it at the end before Kurt Russell sort of shouts his line and throws the dynamite, and that's it. And it's like it's a tiny flaw in an otherwise great film, but like, I think the final confrontation in Alien just edges it for me. But then that final scene with Keith David just is better as well. I think it's
It's
very
just I just think like I bet when Carpenter wrote the final scene with Keith David and Kurt Russell, I bet he thought the Hollywood producers and Suits would never go for it. And the fact that they went for it, and I guess you can see why that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of film critics like kind of didn't maybe mold it at the time, because like basically you're coming out thinking shit. It's not happy. It's basically an open ended, but you know what's going to happen. They're both going to freeze to death.
Well, yeah, I think I read somewhere that John Carpenter did test an alternative ending without Keith David, basically with like I think it was slightly more upbeat. It was Kurt Russell to be rescued or something, and the audience reaction wasn't much different. So it's like, put the original ending.
But I think it's the ending that's probably made it. Really, I think you talk to anybody who I know who loves movies, and the Thing, they all talk about the ending. That the ending is just a masterstroke.
I think for my part, when I've talked to people, it tends to be the effects,
right? The practical effects.
Rob Bottin's like the bit with again, it's the chest burster, the defibrillator.
Oh, the
yeah, and just all of the practical effects are just incredible. Like even if some places you sort of see the seams or you see the wires or whatever, it's like perfect. I wouldn't have it any other
Well,
way.
I think because there's one great line, isn't there, in the effects bit where the head comes off the body,
Yeah,
and then the head sprouts legs.
yeah, yeah.
And the character and the guy looks at it, he goes, "You've got to be effing kidding me."
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's almost like he verbalizes the audience's reaction, which I think is like a real kind of little bit of a knowing kind of nod sort of thing, which I've always liked.
No, yeah, I love that, and I mean, I think all the casts are brilliant, and I find it interesting that so John Carpenter like originally intended this to be like the first part of like a trilogy,
Right.
not an official trilogy, but it's like his apocalypse trilogy, which started with The Thing, and then Prince of Darkness, and then In the Mouth
So
of Man.
almost like Oliver Stone's Vietnam trilogy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Thematic trilogy that not
Yeah.
really linked. But I'm not a fan of Prince of Darkness.
No,
And
with you.
I think there's elements of it I really like. I love the style of it is great, but it doesn't have, and it's just to me it's like The Thing is almost like catching lightning in a bottle, you know, in terms of the cast. Managed to get a really good cast together, and it's like even though they're not necessarily the most sort of fleshed out characters, they're all distinct, and you immediately sort of know who all of them are, and the actors sort of bring their sort of charisma and inject their personality into the roles. Whereas in Prince of Darkness, you've got even more characters. They've got half the personality, and it's just sort of like you don't care about what happens.
Well, I guess in the character casting, you could argue that then it owes a debt to Alien Does the Thing, because very much Ridley Scott's approach for when he was casting and the whole kind of set design was basically like, you know, oil rig workers in space. You know, very much blue collar sort of, and I think that clearly had an effect on Carpenter's casting for The Thing.
And I think also, I mean, we should probably focus it back on The Thing because I keep talking about Alien. But
no, go for it.
I think Walter Hill made, because Dan O'Bannon wrote the script, and then Walter Hill was the producer. He sort of made changes. I think he brought in this idea that basically all the characters were like gender blind. Like you could cast any. It didn't matter who the characters were. And then obviously that changed after the casting and stuff. But I think that's similar for The Thing. I think, although I don't know, I think John Carpenter's maybe like, because I know he loved Howard Hawks, and Howard Hawks is a very man's man director, like just lots of men talking, and I think that's kind of why he sort of went with just an all male cast in this one. But yeah,
but I kind of think probably the sort of, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's just like an expedition station. I would have thought it would have been mainly men.
Oh yeah, no,
anyway,
I think the thing, that's one of the things that stands out in the Thing from Another World is that there's the one female character. Everyone's saying like, this is no place for a dame and stuff like that all the way through. It's like, okay.
But I think just going back on the Alien thing, because I'm a bit of a fan of Walter Hill, but I think Dan O'Bannon did the story, but Walter Hill definitely did the screenplay.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Because the beauty of them, you know, if anybody watching hasn't read the Alien screenplay is just basically the perfect example of reductionism. It's like literally just has one word, one or two words or three words, you know, lights blinking, that's it, you know, and it's just beautiful. Anyway, we should focus on the thing.
You know, so I'm pretty sure Walter Hill introduced the idea of Ash as well being
right. A robot.
Yeah. I think that's a contribution from him as well. So I think, you know, obviously he made big changes then on.
But interestingly, so obviously The Thing 82 and Carpenter's are on a bit of a roll, really, movie wise. I mean, obviously Dark Star had become like a bit of a hit, but I think we've got Escape from New York before this. I think just after it, is it Christine comes out or something like that?
I'm not entirely sure the timelines. I mean, he got off to a flying start. I think it was Dark Star, Assault on Precinct 13.
Assault on Precinct Halloween.
Halloween.
Yeah, and then he did the Elvis TV movie with with Kurt Russell.
Yeah, he's got. I mean, it's almost a cliche to say it now, because people say this all the time, but he's got one of the best like uninterrupted sort of streak of like amazing
Yeah.
film.
Well, he goes Dark Star, Assault on Precinct 13, Halloween, Someone's Watching Over Me, which I haven't seen, Elvis, the TV movie, which is great, the Fog, Escape from New York, The Thing, Christine, Starman, Big Trouble in Little China, and then he goes into Prince of Darkness and They Live. I mean, I got Starman. I absolutely adore. I mean, I remember, what is it? Watching the Jeff Nichols movie, Midnight Special.
Oh right, yeah.
And feeling very much that owed a huge debt to Starman. There was being there, but obviously the real standout there is Big Trouble in Little China, which I just think is brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is always been my favorite John Carpenter film. I saw it. But yeah, I mean that the three films he made with Kurt Russell are all brilliant in their own way, I think. And but yeah, I'm a huge fan of Starman as well. And
so why do you think with The Thing the critics railed against it? Why? Because obviously it found a new lease of life on cable and home video. It's surprisingly like that word of mouth didn't kind of help it a little bit.
I think people got a bit crazy with the gore, maybe, because I think it's just as simple as that. I think people just saw the gore and just sort of disregarded the rest of it, because I think John Carpenter's whole style is sort of like quite what's the word, like kind of quite deadpan, quite sort of key. So it's like there is humor in it. There are like funny moments and stuff like that. But I think because that's kind of subtle, the gore was what sort of lingered in people's minds. I think that's just
and I guess the first real gory scene in it also involves dogs, which will put a lot, and it's pretty horrific what happens to those dogs as well. It doesn't pull any punches, does it? It's like,
no, it's amazing. And again, I know we talked about dog acting in the last podcast. I think the dog they got to play the dog thing is amazing.
Yes,
I think he was that's sort of part wolf. The dog they got, I know he was called Jed, part wolf, part husky dog, and like so the bit where he walks it, and apparently though John Carpenter was like amazed at just how good an actor this dog was, because I think they got like the scene, one of my favorite scenes in the film is when he's just walking through the compound, and there's the Stevie Wonder song playing, and he's sort of walking around and then sort of going into a room and you see a shadow, but you don't know who it is. But like, so when they first brought the dog into the pound with the other dogs, into the kennel, the sort of the reaction from the other dogs was genuine, because they're all huskies, they're like a pack. They introduced this wolf literally into the kennel, so like they all
right, okay,
so it's just brilliant.
Yeah, and it is, isn't it? And it's those little kind of subtle nuances. It's interesting that you mentioned the shadows moment, where the dog walks it, and there are those kind of elements of it which I do think are a little bit of a masterstroke, and and especially like when you're doing something in a confined space, and you're therefore then trying to work out who you think the shadow is from all the characters. I mean, just going to the gore thing, because it is, along with films like Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 and things like that. I mean, it is probably the golden era of gore prosthetics and practical gore effects. Is the thing, and they really go to town, and it is literally custard and latex and things like that, isn't it?
And I might be wrong. I think it was like one of Rob Bottin's first like jobs. He was like around, I think he was like 22, 24,
right?
Did it, and it's like it's crazy, like just the creativity in it. Like when the dog thing happened, like just the sort of the fact it grows like insect legs, its head just splits open, and it's like this all this, and it grows hands to pull itself out of the through the ceiling. Like all this stuff is just like, I think maybe it might have been just a bit overwhelming for people back at the time.
Well, especially the defibrillator scene, isn't it? Because you just don't expect it.
Yes, it's that's another thing where I think, I mean, obviously it's been reassessed over time, so everyone now is pretty much in agreement that the critics back then were wrong. But it's another thing that sort of must have just passed people by, is the sort of subtlety of John Carpenter's direction in it.
Mm.
You know, there's so the bit leading up to the defibrillator bit, it's just so everyone's sort of against Kurt Russell at this point. He's sort of holding them all back, and the tension is just building and building. That's brilliant. And then I think Clark, you see pick up a scalpel, and that's in this brilliant, like I keep saying brilliant, but there's split diopter shot. You've got Kurt Russell in the background. You've got this sort of hand holding a scalpel in the foreground. So you think that's going to be what happens, and then that is it's immediately after the doctor's hand sort of plunging into this guy's chest, and it's like, yeah, it just comes out of absolutely nowhere. But it's sort of, yeah, I love it. It's really effective, that moment.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And you know, and I think a lot of that comes down to kind of Carpenter's skill as a director, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's got this whole thing, like, Halloween, the end of Halloween. Again, that's another one of my favorite like horror endings, where it's like where he could be anywhere. It's like he almost does the same thing in this with the use of sort of space. Like, so you've got like there's so many like empty spaces over people's shoulders, stuff like that. Is like and the whole who's a thing aspect of it, which I just think like I enjoy that a lot more than the sort of like discussions like, oh, who killed Fuchs, who was the thing, who was the shadow, all of that stuff. Because I think that's sort of like, it's not really a film that lends itself to that sort of discussion as well. It's more sort of the mood of like paranoia that is sort of generated.
Absolutely, yeah. And the paranoia thing is, you know, it's a wonderful thing about it, isn't it? Because it's you know, it's a case of, well, who is it? Am I even the thing? You know, you don't even know that if you are it as well.
I know that. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, how do you know? do you actually know? Are you interested that you're a thing, or not? I tend to think that they're not. That they are. That they know when they're a thing, because they're sort of. It's interesting. Like, again, it's subtle. It's much more subtle than they.
Well, I guess it's the thing, because in the book, it talks about how it can even adopt the memories of the person. So yeah, it must know it's the thing, but it's playing the person, sort of thing.
I think there's one of my favorite little moments in the whole film is just as during the blood test scene, Kurt Russell McCready says we'll test Palmer next, and it cuts to Palmer, who's going to be is about to be revealed he's a thing, and his face is just like it's just sort of like, oh,
yeah.
and
and you know, there's such a and that scene in particular where they're all tied to the chair is, I just absolutely love it, because it's, you know, and again it's amazing the effects work going on, because, you know, as he begins to change, you know, and he does the whole thing of just starting to shake, but then, you know, and then you've got the guys who are tied to him like that, and I just think it has like one of those, you know, because it's like, you know, you can't escape, you know, and it's like you've got this thing going, and I just love the reactions of the individual, like at the end of it when it's all settled down, and he goes, you know, if it's okay for you gentlemen, I'd rather not spend the rest of this evening tied to this effing chair. It's like, you know, there's just some lovely like kind of little bits of kind of lighter moments in there as well.
And I think that one's through the whole thing. I mean, I think the whole cast is brilliant. I know they're not. It's not a film that's like known for its like big characters or whatever. It's like an ensemble. Apart from Kurt Russell's obviously the star, and I love him in it. I think it's probably his best. Yeah, it's one of my favorite Kurt Russell film, but Kurt Russell as well. But like the whole ensemble is great. Like David Clennon, who's Palmer, is really good. He's really funny all the way through. They've got that bit where they're talking about what the thing is, and he just sort of leans back and goes like, what is it? Chariot of the Gods, man.
Yeah.
And then you've got
I've always been a fan of Wilford Brimley. Brimley's like, he's like as soon as he comes on screen, you're almost like, I want him to be my granddad. You know, he just has this like warmth about him.
Yeah, I mean, and I was reading about this the other day. Like the casting could have been radically different. Like I know Donald Pleasance was originally cast as Blair.
Right, really? Right, okay.
Yeah. And I think, who did they have for Gary? They had like, was it? I think Powers Booth was in the running
Right.
for Gary, who's like the boss, the boss. I don't know what you call him,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
commander or something.
The station kind of commander, isn't he? Sort
Yeah,
of thing.
or like
That's interesting because that really would have changed the dynamic of
yeah.
probably
It's,
thing.
but I think, like I said, it's one of those things where I think I wouldn't change it. I think they're all, the dynamic of the group is really strong. Like they have, and I love that
Mm,
they set it all up really well. Like they have, before anything happens, you get so many shots of them like just playing ping pong, playing
mm.
poker, just sort of chilling in the
Well,
in
it's
the
like, isn't it, McCready playing the computer chess, and
yeah
he like pours his drink inside it, accuses it of
yeah.
cheating, and I guess that's where they went wrong. A lot of it, I think, with the, is it the 2012 remake, something around that,
I mean, they went wrong
when
in a lot of ways.
yeah, I mean, they went wrong in a lot of ways, absolutely. But I also think, it was very much about everybody's very pretty. You know,
Yeah,
it was a weird casting. Was
the casting was weird, but like my main thing was that like the amount of restraint that John Carpenter uses in the
mm,
film, like there's considering like the reputation it's got for being like just gore,
mm,
it's really sort of measured in its sort of pacing and everything like that. Like he takes his time, and it's like it's like a whodunit, even if we don't
mm,
say who did
yeah,
it. But whereas like in the remake, it's just like they just can't wait. They can't wait to show off all the rubbish effects.
yeah, yeah.
Just reveals
Yeah,
this.
I remember begrudgingly watching it. I think I even waited until it came out on DVD, and I was like, watched it like kind of one Wednesday night or something like that. Because The Thing to me is up there as, for me, a near perfect movie. It's like it's just everything from start to finish about it is just pretty damn faultless.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Um, yeah, I was sort of, because we're talking about yeah, no, I would agree. I think the thing about the remake is they do have that you can go online on YouTube and look, and you can see some of the behind the scenes footage of the practical effects. The practical
Right.
effects did look quite good, but it's just a shame. Like, yeah, I don't think that would have saved it. I think
No.
it wouldn't have been quite as easily just dismissed as this rubbish remake. But like, that it has deeper problems.
Yeah. I think one of the things that also helps The Thing massively, and again, which is why I think, again, it edges Alien a little bit for me in this, is the music. I think Carpenter has this. He started it with Assault on Precinct 13. The music for Assault on Precinct 13, I'm a massive lover of like, like Underworld and Orbital and things like that, and Kraftwerk, and Assault on Precinct 13 is just beautiful example of really early synthesizer music. It's just, and it's like two or three notes, and it's almost the same here with The Thing, where the music is literally just like a repeating motif,
Mm.
and I just think it really adds to the atmosphere of it.
It's brilliant, but I always find it bizarre that he got Ennio Morricone to do the score, and Ennio Morricone just did a John Carpenter score.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I completely agree. I love the sort of, it's really sort of eerie the way the sort of, there's that bit where it's just a note just held, and it's
Mm,
really it really just adds suspense to it all. And obviously Quentin Tarantino repurposed it for the Hateful Eight as well. So there's like whole stretches of the Hateful Eight where
mm.
music from The Thing, which is sort of like, yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's. I just think that Carpenter, he clearly, because obviously he's a musician as well, albeit in a limited kind of sense, but he clearly knows what mood he wants to create in his films, and it wouldn't have even surprised me if he'd have done a temp score himself, Carpenter, and maybe then handed it over to Ennio Morricone, and then and taking it on from there.
Maybe I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know. But like, yeah, I I do.
because it is funny, like what you say. It's almost like Ennio Morricone does John Carpenter.
Yeah, it's weird. It works, but it's a strange thing to hire like someone like Ennio Morricone to like just do the score.
Yeah,
I think this I might be wrong again, but I think this was like John Carpenter's like big like his first studio film, like his first
Right.
big budget film. So I think he had the resources to get a composer, which I think before,
Yeah.
so maybe he did have a temp track and
Yeah, and I think, you know, just going back to the practical effects again, and like one of the reasons why they're so good, is that I think like a tenth of the film's budget was spent on the effects. It's like, you know, I think it was like only $15 million the entire budget for the movie, which back then was a lot of money. But 1.5 million of it was spent on the effects.
wow.
You know, and I think at the time that was like unheard of. But you know, and it's interesting that I still, even to this day, I mean, I watched it with my son a couple of months ago, and you know, he's 24, and he still thinks that the effects hold up.
Yes, I think
Yeah, he doesn't look at it and think they're really cheesy like he does at some other movies.
I think there's maybe one bit that I it's the bit is and it's the bit just after the blood test scene where Windows gets clamped by the head, and that he does. John Carpenter does his best to put it in the foreground, but when you see it, it is just like a floppy ragdoll.
Yeah.
Around the room. But that's the only bit I think doesn't really hold up. I think at that point you're so invested in the sort of the story that it doesn't really matter. I don't.
Yeah, and I guess you know, I guess the only other bit, like what you said before, that doesn't really work is the showdown at the end, where you know there is a little bit of it's obvious it's a stop motion puppet sort of thing, but you know the whole thing under the floorboards and thing like that is really good. Interestingly, I think a lot of that was still shot in LA, but it was all shot in fridges, like giant fridges. So you know, like some of it is fake ice and things like that, but to create the obviously the breath and things like that, they actually shot it in giant fridges in LA.
Yeah, I think I read something like that, and I think I read something like along the lines of like Kurt Russell would like be smoking a cigarette and just just sort of hold his breath until John Carpenter actually he can like breathe that big big bit of smoke like for like you know like cold breath.
Yeah. So let's talk about the ending a little bit then. So because for me, like I really like movies, right, where the ending isn't what you call traditionally nice, wrapped up in a bow, let's everybody go home and have a cup of tea sort of thing. Like, so I'll put it up there with Arlington Road. I always remember the ending of Arlington Road.
Right, yeah.
Is great, you know, where basically he's basically driven the bomb into the basement and he's been tricked, and there are those sorts of movies where you know, I guess Reservoir Dogs is exactly the same. It's not a happy ending. Everybody's not going home at the end of this, and you know,
the Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Donald Sutherland is another one.
Yeah, and that's a great one, isn't it? Where she walks up and you know says his name, and he just turns around and screams at her, and it's a proper like pulls the rug out from underneath you. Is that one? Yeah, the Donald Sutherland Invasion of so. I always forget that that's got Jeff Goldblum in it as well. I always keep forgetting.
It's great. It's
Yeah.
like that was another one on my list when we were talking about horror sci-fi. I was like, how much do I like that? I was like, I like the thing just about more than that one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I like I think the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's funny because I really like the original black and white version. In fact, I probably would still put the black and white version above it. I just really love it. It was like one of the first kind of sci-fi movies that I'd kind of seen, and you know, and it really kind of made an imprint on me. But I do like the Donald Sutherland one as well. Just going back to The Fly quickly, though, we've you know you put The Fly up there. Why do you put The Fly up there? Because I just think it's all right.
Oh, I love it. I love it because again, it's almost similar to. It's interesting because there's so many like from this sort of era, like remakes of like 50s like B movie, like sci-fi horror films. Because you've got The Thing, you've got The Fly, you've got Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you've got The Blob, which is another really good remake. But they just sort of take this sort of fairly sort of standard or at least sort of cheesy like premise and just sort of elaborate on it. And I think with the David Cronenberg version of The Fly, it's just one of the most deeply sad horror films I've
Mm.
seen. And every time I watch it, I don't even really. I mean, obviously, I register the gore because it's amazing. But like, what sticks with me and what resonates with me is just how sad and like poignant their
Mm.
relationship is between Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis in it. And like, at the end of the film is this like her being basically menaced by this giant mutant, and she's holding a shotgun, and it's just heartbreaking. instead of being scary or like repulsed by it, you end up
Mm.
really like it's just really sad. So that's
Yeah,
basically
yeah, yeah.
that's the short answer. Why I like it.
No, I get it, and I always remember seeing it and really enjoying it. But yeah, I kind of, for me, it doesn't. I don't know. I guess it just never kind of rang true me in the same way that the thing did. I mean, I think the thing that gets me with the thing is that there's certain set pieces, but the ending is just. I always just felt that the end. I love the fact that, you know, the book ends when, obviously, when they find the machine that Blair's been building, and the fact that they've stopped it. But obviously they, you know, the film then goes one step further to say, well, look, you know, we're not going back.
Mm,
You know, it's like it'd be reckless for us to go back almost.
yeah, I think, and there's the whole question of like, are they both human? Is one of them a thing? And again, I was doing some reading up on this before, and there are little indicators throughout the film of who might be a thing and who might be human.
Mm.
That sort of are set up by John Carpenter or Dean Cundy, the cinematographer, who's amazing. And he sort of has that whole gives John Carpenter that look, you know, the sort of the anamorphic,
Mm.
all of his like films that the things you associate with John Carpenter, a lot of the time it's Dean Cundy cinematography. But anyway, there's little sort of indicators of who might be a thing and who might be human. And apparently they were talking about, should we put this at the end as well? And John Carpenter was like, no, we don't need we want it to be ambiguous. And I think it all sort of connects back to that the thing about Howard Hawks, which is like, so John Carpenter was a huge fan of Howard Hawks, and one of Howard Hawks' best films was The Big Sleep, the Humphrey Bogart one.
Mm.
There's a bit in that where it's a famously like labyrinthine, convoluted plot. And there's a point where he was like, where Howard Hawks like, I don't know who killed the chauffeur. And he went back to ask the author, like I think it was Raymond Chandler, like, who killed the chauffeur? And Raymond Chandler was like, I don't know. And so like there's this whole thing about like, and I feel like that applies to the thing as well, where like the fun is in the paranoia and the sort of not knowing, not the uncertainty, and sort of rather than sort of knowing exactly who's who sort of thing. I think that sort of at the end is like, that's the fun of it, isn't it? It's like you don't know, and you won't know. You won't. There's no way of finding out. So,
Yeah, and I think that's, again, I know we keep on going back to the which is better, Alien or the Thing. That's why for me it beats Alien, because I just feel like Alien is by the numbers monster in the house sort of thing, going around picking off. I mean, ultimately, Alien is a slasher movie. You know, it's Jason in space. He's just going around killing people, and I get that there's some wonderful moments. I mean, some of the deaths are a little bit throwaway. I always felt that, you know, like at the end where it's almost like, right, we've got to get rid of some characters now, and you know, so we can get to Ripley just being by herself. So you know, I just feel like this.
maybe we were going to agree on this one.
Yeah, but I just felt like it's a little bit throwaway, and you know, I get what you're saying about, you know, the ending in the essentially the lifeboat. You know, but I guess I don't know. Yeah, I like, you know, the whole feelings of paranoia, the craziness of some of the effects, the set pieces, and then the ending is just like why I put it above Alien. Basically, it's
Oh,
and I get, you know, a lot of it is personal choice. I mean, one of the things that I do think is inspired um, about Alien is getting Geiger to do the designs.
yeah. But I think, I mean, I love both films. I think I would rank Aliens ever so slightly higher, but I I also think that a lot of the reasons why the Thing stands out as opposed to Alien is because Alien had come out earlier, and they were very much acting. Well, we don't want to make just another Alien. So I think there are each. I think they've both got pros
But
and cons.
I think you're right. I think what you're saying is it's clear that the Thing owes a debt to Alien.
Yeah, I mean,
so therefore, probably Alien should be elevated above it.
Maybe
so,
just a little. But
yeah. Listen, I'm fine with it. I mean, I love both movies, and I just wish we could have more horror movies like sci-fi horror that's on a par with them. Because there isn't much that's been out, that kind of beats them really.
No, I mean that's the other thing I was thinking when I was doing my list of like what other horror sci-fi are there. There weren't that. I mean, recently the ones. The main one I thought of was Under the Skin. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yeah. Which I mean, I love Jonathan Glazer. He's working advertising, and then when he went into movies, and Sexy Beast is just, incredible.
But have you seen Under the Skin?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That'd be my. I mean, recent years, that'd be the one that I would point to as like.
My only thing about Under the Skin is, I think it's a superb performance by Scarlett Johansson, because from what I understand, they put like cameras in the van that she was driving around, and some of the interactions that she has with people are actually genuine interactions on the street. They weren't like, they basically just said to her, right, go drive around Glasgow and go and ask some people for some directions, basically, and try and pick them up.
Yeah, and people just didn't seem to recognize it was.
But it's and it is, and the one thing that I do like about Under the Skin is that there's a lot of kind of a lot left unsaid, and the whole thing about the guy on the bike, what is the black place, that they go into and things like that. There's a lot of things that you don't. It's not signposted for you as to what it is, and I think that's that when filmmakers leave it open to interpretation, I think is really good.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite kind of thing as well, sort of minimalist, like economical scripts, stuff like that. But yeah, I guess Annihilation would be another one. Sorry, just racking my brains. I like that one a lot, the Alex Garland one.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've got a lot of problems with Annihilation because I've read the trilogy of books.
Oh, okay, I haven't.
Yeah, and it's just, and it's I think he did really well with trying to kind of condense it, but I don't know. It just didn't ring for me. But did that one up? I don't think it's that. I mean, I mean, Ex Machina is just unbelievable.
Yeah,
I think it's one of the most perfect sci-fi movies ever made. It's just incredible.
I'm a big fan of Men as well, even if I don't.
Yeah. It's interesting because Men is similar in a way to Under the Skin, isn't it? There's a lot of things that are left unsaid. Interestingly, because when I saw the trailer for Men, I was like, oh yeah, this looks really good. I remember going to watch it. I really liked it, but a couple of my mates hated it.
I know it got a very. I think it's quite a divisive film. I'm not sure if we're in the majority. But I it's one of those films that like it just it's not. It doesn't seem like the message is particularly subtle, but it really made an impact on me when I was watching it. I thought the ending was just like absolutely bananas, but in the best way. And we haven't really talked about Kurt Russell.
No. Well, let's do it. So, what's your thoughts on Kurt Russell? I mean, Russell's. I mean, you're right. There's three kind of big performances for me from Kurt Russell in, throughout this period of his career. Obviously, we've got Snake Plissken from Escape from New York, but also we've got Jack from Big Trouble in Little China. But I also think this is another great performance by him.
Yeah, I love. I read an interview with him where he said that like he liked the character because like he was like part of the group, the crew, but not of them. He's not separate. He's the pilot, so he's not that as scientifically minded as the others. So he just takes a very sort of nuts and bolts approach to it all. And sort of his performance, like I think he's supposed to be like a Vietnam veteran or something. And
Right.
he's out in the he likes it just because it's cold and he's on his own basically. And like when he has to sort of take charge, he doesn't feel like he's like, I'm the hero. It's like fine, I'll do it, I guess. Like, like it's
well,
like,
there's a lovely performance of him. I mean, obviously the hard drinking thing is, but there's a lovely bit where they say, Mac, we've got to go up in the air, we've got to go to this Norwegian plane, and he doesn't say anything, and he just looks up, doesn't he? He's like, looks up, and it's like, and that says everything.
yeah,
You know, it's such a, like, you know, it shows. It's interesting because I always think Kurt Russell is one of those. You know, he was very much almost like a Ryan Gosling thing of, you know, did the rounds in the Disney kind of films and things like that, and then ultimately craved credibility in his later years, which is very much, you know, similar to kind of Ryan Gosling, which is, you know, he started out in the Disney club and has basically in his adulthood got credibility, and you know, but you know, Kurt Russell just did so many great icons, and it's funny because his performances, how he plays Jack and how he plays Snake and how he plays McCready, it's testament actually to what a good actor he is, because he brings a lot to the table with them.
so distinct. It's like, and yeah, I just think he's a great like hero in that he's not like he's not, he's obviously the star, but he's not like I don't know what the word is, like he's not he's not the most heroic character. He's just sort of, yeah, I don't know. So I ran out of steam.
No, it's all right. Well, listen, look, we're going to wrap this up on the thing. Nick, thank you so much for spending some time with me talking over this movie. I mean, I absolutely adore it. You know, I encourage anybody who's not seen it to just go and track it down and watch it, because you are in for a very, very special movie experience. I think it's brilliant. I think it's better than Alien. Let's get that last one in there. Nick, thank you so much for joining us. Feel free to say goodbye.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, bye.
As always, no, it was absolutely brilliant having you here again, mate. And I love how passionate and knowledgeable you are about movies. So you're always welcome back anytime. Right, thank you very much, everybody. That's it from another episode of FilmFellas, and we'll catch you soon.